we'll take a question over here and then a question from the gentleman in the yellow.
So, you guys went around the country doing outreach, to prepare for this, to let people know they had a safe place, basically, to come and be here. And now that, all eyes in the country are on St. Paul and what's happened here, this has been an unusual experiment in fascism, basically, to this country's history. What would you say to people when they see barricades start going up around their downtowns like it's happened here, and military checkpoints and such, in terms of strategies for defense?
Don't be surprised, but in terms of strategies, that's not what we're really here to speak to.
And I also think that we haven't seen this played all the way through yet.
Yeah.
It'll be really great to see what happens after this press conference and what kind of pressure can be put on the city and the sheriff's office to say no to this kind of tactics.
Who are you? Just
I am Oliver Steinberg. I am a St. Paul resident, taxpayer, Ramsey County taxpayer. Our county attorney, Susan Gertner, is officially committed and has made public statements that the Ramsey County's attorney will not prosecute innocent people and will make efforts, this is their policy, make efforts to establish the innocence of prisoners who may have been mistakenly arrested.
We'd like to have this go back to us. You can have your press conference at a different
Dylan
time.
Asplund is one of these prisoners arrested.
What's your question?
Okay, I have a question.
What's your...
So do you guys have an official response to the claims that the authorities are making that they did find weapons and buckets of urine?
We just said...
Secondly,
we can address the buckets of urine.
Okay.
Secondly, hang on, sorry. Secondly, can you talk a little bit about what somebody was saying about a minor being handcuffed at this venue as well? Thanks.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Well, I will speak to the first question in terms of items claimed. I mean, I don't think anyone here knows of anything regarding explosives, and I think as has been said many times, I certainly don't know, and I can only speak for myself, but I was heavily involved inside of making this space up over the last week, and particularly with regard to the buckets of urine, we really after the sheriff's department seemed to have such a fetish for scatology, we really we spent a long time thinking through and discussing with one another where this could have come from, and we finally did remember that there was an instance at a general town hall. We've been having many town halls to talk to local St. Paul residents to make sure that we touch bases with them in their community, to make sure that the activists coming in out of town would be in conjunction with the local communities here inside of St. Paul. And at one of these town halls, which we did in conjunction with other activists who've been organizing around, organizing marches and the like, they assisted us in organizing these town halls, and we were really there just to hear from the community. One person stood up in the background. I believe this was with Weyerhaeuser Chapel and McAllister College. I'm not sure what time it was or what the date was that this town hall was. And this guy stood up in the back and he said, "What you guys really ought to do is throw piss at the Republicans." And everybody was sort of like, and he was sort of a sketchy figure. And I think we may have mentioned it to one another. Remember the P guy? A couple other times since. But that is the only instance that the only thing we know of. And with regards to the buckets and buckets, yes, there were buckets of gray water. Folks who washed their dishes and wanted to save water had some buckets in their homes, particularly those who were extra concerned. There was no urine in those, and I believe instead of one instance we can confirm that somebody who was living in a garage didn't have plumbing going out to that garage. Again, they raided so many houses. One person who was living in a garage, staying there or whatever in that room, had a bucket that he had pissed a little bit in because he couldn't get access to the toilet, and that's as much as we can.
So I've actually been listening. I want to ask a question that I need an answer to because
we'll get to the second question.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
Okay, sure. If that depends.
So I've been listening. So I'm going to try to ask a question that hasn't been asked yet that you haven't answered yet. I heard a lot about consensus. I mean, that's the whole point. Non-hierarchical, there aren't leaders, there's always a consensus. You see these hand signal process points up here. I was part of your group in terms of observing, and there definitely were violent tactics by some people. Whether they were active members of the core group of welcoming committee leaders, I can't say. What I'm asking though is, how do you personally feel that some people involved in the greater movement did engage in violent tactics?
One, I want to clear up one misconception briefly. The welcoming committee, the name the welcoming committee only applies, well, I mean, everybody can claim they're all Spartacus, right?
Right.
But we were simply at the center and at other places organizing medics. Like, the welcoming committee has never officially, we were not on the streets. There was no welcoming committee banner on the streets. So in terms of acts of violence, I really don't understand where those could have taken place. There's simply no location where those could have happened. And when the cops, like, came in and smashed our faces against the floor, like, the only violence that took place.
I'm talking about like on the streets during that first day. I want to know how you feel personally about it, because that's something you can speak.
Let's go back to the other question, though.
Okay.
So the second part of your question.
It was basically that we were told, there was somebody here, that there was a minor who was arrested, who was detained and handcuffed. Can you wait one second?
Tell us when you're ready.
Okay, yeah, there was a minor who was detained and handcuffed at this venue during the raid. Is that correct? Can you talk a little bit about that? Or the arrest of any other minors?
No one was actually arrested at the raid in this space. The legal demands, which you can see up on the wall, which come from legal folks who are more familiar with the cases that are going through the jail, are very specific and are backed up by things, and the lawyer's press conference is probably the best place for that question. I know that they have said that minors are being held along with everyone else in the Ramsey County Jail. And that's one of the demands, is that those minors be released.
What's your name again?
Andy Fulster.
Do you know how many minors?
I do not.
So I'm probably the right one to talk about the violence question.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Okay. I can tell you that in the 18 months that I've been with the Welcoming Committee, I have been listening as a religious pacifist, as a nonviolence trainer, as someone with a reputation to uphold. I've been listening really carefully to what's been discussed in the Welcoming Committee. I've been listening to what's been talked about. I've been present at the action camp that was named in the affidavit. And I've been assessing all the time whether I want to keep on this track. And I've been answering myself yes every time I ask that question. The definition of violence itself is very slippery. In some cases, property destruction is considered violence, and in some cases it's not considered violence by the very people that I work with the most closely in the peace and justice community. The definition of violence itself is slippery. Second point, tactical innovation that I spoke about before for nonviolent direct action is not going to come from the center. It's not going to come from the folks who have been organizing marches and rallies and doing a good job of it and doing it well. It's not, but they're not the innovators. The innovators are the people who are dissatisfied with that model. And that's the people in the Welcoming Committee, and that's the people we invited to come here. I can tell you that I personally did not and probably wouldn't smash the Macy's window. But I'm not going to condemn the person who did it.
Why?
I don't know what's going to come of this. I think that
the window was replaced. I mean, that was what was the result of it.
Yeah, okay. I think that there's a good expression, a good argument that capitalism is a problem. Macy's is a capitalist.